Okay, so I'm going to scroll back and take them from the top. Oh, wow. Look, we got people on from Nairobi. That's fantastic. Hi, Kevin. How you doing? Thanks for being on. From Namibia, from Kingston, Canada. We got people from all over the world today. So hope all of you are doing well. All right, looks like the first question here is from Michelle. And she says, how can we do this? Just a second, I got to have some coffee. Michelle says, how can we do this with short intros, 0 and 6 second intros, and not stopping down the music? It's the big challenge with personality radio. Michelle, I'll say this in the best example that I have. Consider yourself an artist. Every one of you that's on the air is an artist. And your assignment as an artist is to create great art on whatever canvas you're given. Now, your canvas may be the size of a postage stamp, or it may be the side of a building. The size of your canvas is going to expand and it's going to get bigger the better you get at doing these things. The more you pass through the different stages in the personality success path, the bigger that canvas is going to be. Now, I have a lot of feelings about those short intros. Songs are produced very differently now than they were produced ago. Used to be we'd have 15 or 20-second intros for every song that we played. And there's a lot of time to talk up those ramps, and it sounded great on the air. But in a short attention span world that we live in now, songs are produced differently. They start cold, or they start with 4 seconds, and there's not enough time to even say the name of the station in your name, let alone have some sort of an impact there. There are some things that you can do. If you go to insidersradionetwork.com and do a search for music beds, you'll see an article that I wrote there that gives you some advice on how to create long intros for for cold intros and cold intro songs. And there's a couple of examples of some shows that I work with that have done that with just about every song in their library that creates an intro for a song that has no intro. And it's that same song. So you're basically adding to what the artist has created to make the radio station sound better. Now, don't just start doing this without permission from your manager or your program director, because they may not like this idea. But I believe that every station that is truly trying to develop personalities needs to find places for those personalities to perform. And the personality's responsibility is to take that that gift seriously and create art with it every single time that you can. Another example, I don't think you need a lot of time to show your personality if you're creative and clever. Long time ago, Ronald Reagan was asked to speak at a public affairs dinner. And he asked, well, how long do you need me to speak? And the organizer said, well, what difference does it make? I mean, you can speak as long as you want. He goes, well, it makes a great deal of difference. If you want me to speak for an hour, I'm ready now. If you want me to speak for 10 minutes, I'm going to need some time to prepare. So the shorter your window, the shorter your time, the time in your clock that you have to perform, the more important preparation becomes. So that's part of the responsibility that comes with you. In the tjohnsonmediagroup.com site, if you do a search there for 7 seconds, I outlined a break that I heard in Miami a few years ago that was a 7-second break over the intro of a song. And it was called Hot in 7 Seconds. 7 seconds had every element you'd want in a great break. It was absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to tell you what it was because I want you to go there and read all of it. It's really terrific. But Michelle, it is a problem. And Dean says he was thinking the same thing. It is a problem. It's an issue. It's a challenge. It's a barrier. It's an obstacle. If you're in a station that is not going to allow you to ever demonstrate personality and character, and they don't really care about you developing your character, and you want to be in stage 4 and stage 5, get to a station that lets you do it, or work with your program director, work with your general manager to find some ways that you can, as Mike says, break the rules and take some chances. I guarantee you that they'll give up some of that territory, give up some of that turf, but you also have to earn it. You can't just start doing it unless it's going to play well with the audience. George's question in the introduction stage, does that apply if you are going from one shift to another, say nights to AM drive? Yeah, that's a great question, George, and I should have put it in the seminar. It does. It's amazing, especially if you're going from nights to any day part, because the cume on most stations is much lower at night, and so therefore the familiarity is a lot lower for the personalities there. But even if you are going from afternoons or middays to the morning show, it's amazing if you look at the cume for the individual day part and compare that cume with the station's total cume. This is a really key number, by the way. And by the way, it's also a number that you can look at, a measure to see where you are in the personality success path. I'll ask you this so you can kind of answer it in your mind, and then I'll give you the answer. Think about the station's entire cume. 100% of the listeners who tune in the station at any time during a typical week. What percentage of those people listen to the station in the morning? Now think about what percentage of those people, of the total cume, listens to the station in afternoons, middays, nights. Typical, and there's a broad range. The answer, so let's talk about morning drive. Typical is about 32%, or less than a third, just less than a third of the station's total audience ever listens to the radio station in the morning show. Does that kind of blow you away? I've seen that number be as low as 15%, by the way. I've seen it as high as 60%. Actually, I've seen it as high as 62%. I just saw it in a station that I'm doing a project with right now. For other day parts, it's usually less. Sometimes, like with an AC station, middays and afternoons will be a little bit higher than the morning show. But usually other day parts is less high profile, less cume sharing than the morning show. So it's amazing how unfamiliar personalities are on their own radio station in different times of the day. It's kind of sobering. But if you're moving from afternoons, which is probably the second most high profile day part on most stations, moving to morning, you're really talking to largely a brand new audience. So you're moving to the introduction stage. George, your question also brings up another interesting point. Where you are in the personality success path, what stage you're in, will vary by individual as well as a audience as a whole. In other words, you have new people who are coming to the station, or people who haven't thought about the station, aren't as into radio, that may be in the introduction stage. And you could be into growth, like, or love with some of your other listeners, some of your fans, some of those big P1s. So you're at a different stage of development with each individual listener. But what you really want to look at is the collective, because you want that rising tide to lift all boats. So you're really performing in a different way in a lot of cases with everybody. It kind of gets down in the weeds and gets into more than we really have time to get into here. Pam says, on a greatest hits station, more energy requested, not a relaxed performance. Don't mistake energy for relaxed performance. Some of you who've been on these seminars before probably have heard me say this several times. A lot of times when I talk to a personality, I say, look, we really need to bring up the energy level. So what does the personality do? They talk faster, they talk louder, and they play a techno music bed behind them. So now they're just shouting at me and talking so fast I can't keep up with them. Energy has nothing to do with how fast or how loud you talk. Energy has to do with what comes out of your mouth, what are the words that you're saying, how your stories are told, how you're communicating and how you're connecting, how you're creating anticipation. And some can't. If you listen to Broadway Bill Lee, who's on CBS in New York on a classic hit station, he is a mile a minute. It's like he's shot out of a cannon, but you can understand everything he says because he has great diction. He has great inflection. He changes his tone. He changes, he has personality that oozes out of him. So he's performing very fast, but he's still relaxed. He's still relaxed inside of that. perform at the point where you're relaxed. And the more you do that and the more you push your tempo, the more relaxed you'll be in talking faster. So, but don't talk so fast that it's out of control and I can't understand anything you say, because when you talk so fast that I can't understand or I can't pick up the emotional connection that's in your words, at that point, it's that's too much talk, and that's really all there is to it. Jen, hey Jen, good to have you on. Why is management quick to make changes in radio personalities after only a year or so, when these stages of growth may take longer? What a great question. They do take longer. I've always said that if you put a new personality on and allow them to be personalities, and you support them and you promote them and you nurture them and you grow them, if you can get through the introduction stage in 3 months, that's great. If you can get to familiarity in 6 months, you're doing really well. And you're 6 months in before you know what you've got. So now you get through 6 months and you start into the growth stage. You'll be in the growth stage for a long, long time. I advise clients not to bring a personality in unless they have at least a 2-year plan. And the 2-year plan for promotion, for support, for building their confidence, for nurturing that relationship with the audience. It's like if I go on a dating app and I decide I'm going to look for someone and I want to be married in 3 months. How's that going to work out? What kind of a person is going to marry me in 3 months and meeting me on a dating app? It's going to take time. There's a courtship period there. And that's why I call this presentation Romancing the Listener. But management freaks out. And I understand it in some cases, because a lot of times you've got a manager or a program director who's spent money on a personality and they've sold it up to their boss and their boss's boss that this is going to be what turns the station around. And what happens when you make a significant change on a radio station? Usually you run people off before you start attracting new ones. You moved my cheese. So all the listeners that were there don't like the new show that has come on as much as the show they were replacing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been listening to the show that's been replaced. So there's some loss at the beginning, and it takes a while for the personalities to find their way, to be introduced, to become familiar, and it takes time to nurture that that transition. So you've got to have a strategic approach as a program director, as a general manager, as a company, and really be committed to the personality process. Because this is, by the way, the personality success path is not always pretty. It's sloppy, man. You make mistakes all the time. To grow as a personality and to do some of these things, especially when you're finding your carpool karaoke and you're exploring different ways to show off your character, while also demonstrating the way that demonstrating that you love the things that listeners love. Get into telling personal stories. That's hard, man. It takes time, and it's experimentation, and it's not going to be perfect every time you turn on the microphone. But a lot of times there's so much pressure on management, and they just want to hear great things coming out of the speakers. They want to hear instant response, and then the revenue doesn't follow right away. And so they freak out and they decide we should play more songs. Let's get more music back on. And it's going backwards. But the best thing I can recommend to anybody is to get with somebody who nurtures talent, understands the value of talent, and has a long-term approach to the success path. Andrew Yusso, what's the best way to come up with your one thing? Great question. How do you find the one thing? Well, you'll find the one thing. You'll recognize the one thing when you have a great character profile of you and anybody else that's on your show. Maybe you're a solo show. Maybe you're a multi-personality show. You need a personality profile, character profile for everybody on the show. And when you have that, then you'll start to recognize the things that fit your character and things that don't. What fits the show, what fits my brand, what fits my personality brand, and what doesn't. Then look around and see what works for other shows. No reason to try and reinvent the wheel, but if you can put a different spin on it, if you can personalize some of those things to your show, that's even better. If you go to my insider site, insidersradionetwork.com, and go into features, there are hundreds of features with details on how to execute them. There's also the most successful features, the highest recommended features, and details on how you can do that. I've also got a ebook about the features, and it's called Winning Features and How to Execute Them. It's on the tjohnsmediagroup.com site. You can download that, and it's got some of the better features as well. And it gives you some more instructions, some more details on how you can find out one thing. Mal Reynolds says, how can you do a successful transition of these when you are only on swing in work? Well, again, when you're only on occasionally, it's going to be much more difficult to get traction. You're probably going to be forever in introduction, and maybe with some listeners into familiarity. The goal, if you're in swing, if you're in a swing shift and you're filling in, then the best thing that you can do is to be a great performer, execute all of those things that I recommend in the introduction stage, and get the attention of that program director so they want to put you into a regular show, and then you can start building a show. Cindy Taylor says, where can you get that download chart from your site? If you go to tjohnsonmediagroup.com and do a search there for Personality Success Path, it'll bring up the article that goes into more detail about each of the stages, and you can download it from that page. Don Collins, hey, great to have you on, Don. Thank you. I'm working with many radio stations that have incorporated Twitch video and chat. I'm finding these steps are fast forwarded substantially as the audience that gravitates to the video. Have you found the same when video and chat with platforms like Twitch are incorporated? It's a little bit different, Don, because I think that personalities who are doing a lot of video are attracting people to video because they already have some familiarity. There's no reason for me to go on your website and watch you on video, or to go on even on Twitch and seek you out and try to find you on video, unless I already kind of like you or I'm interested in you. I'm already dating you, and this is a chance to do something else cool on that date. So I think that that's a little bit different. Now, if you were starting a brand new Twitch channel, whether you're a gamer or a talk host or a podcaster that has no audience at all and zero familiarity, and you start that on Twitch, then I think it's exactly the same process, because nobody knows who you are. You're in discovery. And I think that when you make a video connection and people are looking at you and connecting with you that way, you can probably accelerate through each of these stages a little bit more quickly. But I think you still go through those stages. And the reason I think you can go through the stages faster is because video is a different experience than audio alone. Video is something that people make a choice to sit down and watch, or to interact with in a lot of ways. Whereas audio, in most cases, is a back medium. I'm listening to it on headphones while I'm doing something else. I'm listening to the radio in my car, the podcast in my car. So audio alone is not as interactive as video is. So I think that Twitch and getting a video platform is great, especially for personalities who have a substantial fan base that are in the like and love stage of their personality growth stage. And by the way, for those of you who are interested and think that you really are in the like and love stage, get with Don, because he's doing some amazing things in taking personalities to Twitch. Deborah says, how do you introduce yourself and the 5 steps when it's the second station in the group and the exact opposite group of listeners? Deborah, clarify that a little bit. I'm not quite sure what that means. How do you introduce yourself in the 5-step when it's a second station in the group and the exact opposite group of listeners? Not sure. Explain what you're asking me a little bit more. I'm not sure I give you the answer you're looking for there. Robin Thompson says 4 stations, 4 different languages, different cultures, tough going. Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're, that's Robin's probably commenting from someone in Nairobi. I know in Nairobi, I worked with some stations there for a while, and in the same building that we'd have 3 or 4 different languages being spoken on different stations, which makes it really hard for personalities to do shifts on multiple shows. It cuts down on the voice tracking and using the same personalities like they're doing here in the States, doesn't it? But yeah, different cultures, tough going. But again, you're really looking to connect with the audience that you have on the one, how you can make a one-to-one connection there as much as you possibly can. Let's see. Okay, Deborah says, I've added a second air shift at another station in the group, middays at AC, nights at Classic Rock. Okay, now I get it. I think you got to look at it as 2 different success paths. Yeah, man, you talk about multitasking. That's really hard, and it gets really complicated. Now, you probably have a little bit of crossover, but that crossover audience is not going to be very much. So I would look at it as you've got 2 different personality success paths, and you're at a different stage on each one. Now, if you just added a new shift at the second station in the group, you're obviously in the introduction stage there. And if you're middays at AC and you've been doing that for a while, you're probably past introduction and are at least in familiarity. So you're going to prepare a different show in a different way on the 2 stations because you're in a different stage of development and you're on a different format. In fact, I would even suggest that you might use a different name on the 2 different shows. So it's like an actor that's performing on 2 different sitcoms at the same time. They get into a different character role depending on the sitcom they're acting in at that time. So hopefully that helps, Deborah, but you really do have to look at it as I'm on a different station and I'm a different personality there. So, okay, that's all the questions that have come in the chat room for now. I'll be checking back on it, but I do have a few that came in the survey before the seminar started. And there's like a handful here. Let's see. And some of these, I'm just going to read the question. I'll refer you somewhere else because it doesn't really deal with the personality success path. Scott says, how to get listeners to call unprompted. Scott, I'll direct you to the tjohnsonmediagroup.com site and do a search for listeners as cast members. Do a search for phone calls. And on the insidersradionetwork.com site, do a search for phone calls. And it's under the personalities tab. There's a whole section that shows you exactly how to get phone calls and a process for it. I've also got an ebook on that you can get on the site. In fact, I'll probably bring that back in a seminar later on this year, and we'll try to do that again to update that because that continues to be an issue for a lot of shows and a lot of stations. How to get the most out of artists when interviewing them. Again, I'm going to send you to insidersradionetwork.com. There, go to personalities, and then the drop-down menu, there's a option for interviews and tons of information about interviews. And by the way, this isn't just for interviews with artists or guests. It's also how you can get more out of callers when they call, because it's exactly the same thing. When you put a caller on the air, they're a guest on your show, just like an artist might be a guest on your show. So the interview techniques apply to callers as well. And in some cases, it even applies to co-hosts that you're working with. Next is integration of on-air and digital and the impact that digital has on TSL. I'm dealing with this in a seminar probably early this summer. I'm kind of laying out the seminars for the rest of the year. I did one of these about 2 years ago on how to connect what you're doing on the air with what you do online. And a lot has changed and a lot continues to change. So I'm updating that, probably going to work with several technologies so I can show you some amazing ways that personalities are having a major impact on their bottom line and are actually making a lot of money by doing some things with digital. How many times you must do a stop break and how many songs play after until the stop break? I can't really answer that question because it depends too much on individual situations. It really all depends on your station. It depends on the competitive situation, depends on your format, depends on your program director, depends on the goals that the station has for your day part. There's a lot of different theories on clock management and clock structure. If you want my thoughts on that, you can go to insidersradionetwork.com, go to programming, and then go to the drop-down menu. It's clock structure. There's a lot in there in clock structure where I discuss that. I discuss both the pros and cons. Basically, I've got two answers. One is the ratings answer, and the other is the art answer. So there's a science answer and there's an art answer. Next is, how do we avoid crossing the line of being self-indulgent with personality content? This is a great question, and it's exactly what we're talking about today in the personality success path. How do we not cross the line and be self-indulgent in personality content? This is really important, and there's a thin line between being all about us and connecting to listeners on their level on things that the audience is interested in. In every case, whether you're in the introduction stage or the love stage, you want to be revealing your character traits and who you are through what you say. But the listener doesn't care about you yet when you're in the introduction and familiarity and even the growth stage. They don't really care about you until you get into that like and love stage. So how do you keep from making it sound like it's all about you? Well, there's a lot in that. The audience only cares about your story if they can see themselves in the story. 2 months ago, let's see, I think it was in December. I think it was December's webinar was an advanced storytelling seminar, and it covers this in a lot of detail. It talks about how you can tell stories about things that happen to you that don't sound self-indulgent, and how you can tell the same story and have it come off sounding like all we do is talk about ourselves. So I would direct you there. Go to the Advanced Storytelling Seminar. It's at tjohnsonmediagroup.com. Click on seminars or webinars at the top, and you'll find the Advanced Storytelling Seminar. There's a lot more in there. Related to that, last month, I did a seminar on powerful language. And there's a lot in that applies as well, that if you can change your language and make powerful statements, it doesn't come off as being self-indulgent. As if you're using the 12 pronouns. There's 12 pronouns in the English language. The dangerous ones are 5, I, me, or the 4, I, me, us. I call it the disease of I, me, we, us, where if you can eliminate or greatly reduce I, me, we, and us from your language, you're automatically going to be more powerful. Your comments are going to be stronger, and it's going to sound much more listener related than self-indulgent and personal. So that's a pretty quick trick. But check out the Powerful Language Seminar as well. Looks like we have one more question, and I'll tackle that. And then if there's no more questions, if you have any questions, now's the time to type them in, because I'm going to wrap this up here after I answer this one. It's from Armando, and Armando says, a 3-team morning show. Can each member be at a different stage, or are you looking at the entirety of the show? What if a new person replaces an original member of the show? Great question. And the answer is both. 3-team show. Think of the show as an entity of its own. And the show is going to be at a specific place in their personality success path. The show may be in the like or love stage, but a new member of the show is in the introduction stage. And so that new member of the show is behaving differently than an existing member or one of the members who is in a like or love stage of their own personality success path. So each personality has their own personality success path, but the show as a combination has its own personality success path that goes through all those stages at the same time. So hopefully that makes sense. I hate to give those vague answers like both, but the answer really is both. It's both individual stages and the show stages as well. And if the new person replaces an original member of the show, then you lose some of that somebody who might be in an advanced stage, and you're replacing them with someone that's in introductory stage. So that person who's coming into the show needs to absolutely be performing as if they are brand new and nobody knows anything about them. And the rest of the cast members can help them with that by the way that they position it. They can position it as to help the audience get to know this personality much quicker. And that's a real advantage for a personality to come into an existing show that's very well known.